Hi everyone, my name is Kajal Glotra, and in this series we will be talking about features that Java 22 has introduced. For in this video we will be talking about statement before super. This feature that I am right now talking to you about, statement before constructor, is still a preview feature. Preview feature is a feature whose design, maybe specifications and implementation, everything is done. Okay, so the code has been released in Java 22, but maybe it is discontinued in maybe the next version, maybe Java 23 it is discontinued. So what I have done is, in order you to understand it in detail, I've created two projects, one with Java 17 and one with Java 22. You can see in Java 17 demo, in external files, it is utilizing Java 17. I have this parent Java 17 class. In this parent in Java 17 has two parameters, of both of them are of integer type, int I and int j. So whenever you want to create an object of parent in Java 17, either you can call the default constructor, either you can call the parameterized constructor, in which you have to pass both. This child in Java 17 is extending the parent in Java 17, and you only have a string with you. Okay, now I have only provided you one constructor whenever you want to create an object of child in Java 17, where you have to pass this child string. From this main class, I am trying to create an object of child in Java 17. Once I'll run this application, you can see, because I am creating an object of child in Java 17, it will go into this constructor. On line number 6, there is a keyword called super, because if I'll talk about the parent in Java, there is no constructor which is taking string in it, and you have the default constructor. By default, this super keyword is there, and this super keyword is calling this default constructor, because you do not have integer I and j inside the constructor, and you do not have any constructor in the parent class with string in it. So by default, this super is calling this, and the first line of this constructor is the super by default. Okay, so that means if you are writing it or if you are not writing it, compiler is adding it by itself, but it will always remain the first line of your constructor. You can see this line is getting printed, that in parent in Java 17 default constructor. This line is getting printed once the object of parent has been created. Now this statement is getting printed in child, and then after it is just returning you the child. I want to check if child string is empty. I'll say throw new runtime exception, and let's say child string should not be blank. What I want to put a check that if this is empty, then by default no object creation should be happening, and it should just throw an exception. You can see if I am trying to add a super keyword after line number 8, it is just giving me an exception, and it says call to super must be the first statement in constructor body. So that means you cannot call it here, and by default this super will get added onto here, onto the line number 6. I'll just try to run this application one more time, but this time I'll pass this child string as blank. Now you will able to see that a parent object has still been created, and after that for child it has just throwing an exception. Now let's talk about the same thing in Java 22. For that, I have created this Java 22 demo project. Inside this I have this main, and I have two classes. One is this parent in Java 22. So this is the child in Java 22, and this child Java 22 is extending this parent in Java 22. We still have the string inside this Java 22 by the name called child string, and now I want to put a check before creating an object of parent that this child string is blank or not. You can see I am passing this child string in my constructor of child, and then I have this static method in which I am just checking whether my string is empty or not. If the string is empty, I am just throwing an exception, and if it is not, I am just returning it as it is. If I'll go into the parent class, I have printed the statements in it as well. Okay, I'll just go into main and I'll try to create an object of Java child in Java 22. I'll just pass this blank and I'll try to run this one. By default, compiler is adding that super keyword here, right? Because you can see this in parent Java 22 default constructor. So that means at first it is going into the parent constructor and then after it is checking whether the string has value or not, right? Now I want to put this super here and this super is not throwing an exception. So I'll just run this again and you can see that whenever I'm trying to call this, at that time before calling the parent constructor, it is calling this method which is check child string, and because the string is empty it is just throwing this exception, right? And I can just print a statement here as well. So I'll say sout check has passed. Now I'll go into main and I'll try to pass one value inside this child string and I'll try to run this one more time, and now you will able to see that first of all it is going into this method which is check child string, and because the check has passed it is just printing this statement. Then I have this super keyword, so that's why parent default constructor is getting called, and then after it is printing this statement. The point is, by default whenever you will ask constructor to put this super keyword, it will put this super keyword onto the first line of the child constructor. But if you want to put this super keyword anywhere else in Java 22, you can put it. But now there is a catch. You can only call this check child string method till the time it is static. If I'll remove the static keyword, so that means it is an instance level function. If this is an instance level function, okay, that means you always need an object of child in Java 22 in order to call this. You cannot call it directly, right? So whenever it comes to instance methods, you cannot call it from the constructor, or you cannot access the instance level variable inside your constructor. You can only call the static method. Only you can check the variables which are not your instance level variable. For example, this child string is not your instance level variable, right? So that's why you can check it. And I want to check this dot child string, then it will just give you an exception. The conclusion is you cannot check anything related to your object inside this before calling the super keyword, but still you can call your static method, or you can put a check onto the strings or maybe variables that are coming into your constructor. Now I'll go into Java 17 again in order to understand the second difference. I'll go into this main and I'll pass this child string. But now I want to call, instead of this super which is by default getting inserted by the compiler, I want to call this constructor where int I and int j is there. So now I cannot have int I and int j on line number 6. So if I want to call the super constructor with parameters, then I'll have to call this child in Java with parameters. So let's say 1 and 3, and then I have to collect the data int I and int j. Now I can call this super with I and j. I'll just run this application. Now I have passed the parameters in my child in Java, which is child, and then I'm passing I and j, and I can call the parent parameterized constructor as well. But I cannot instantiate the value of I and j in my constructor of child. Okay, I'll go back into Java 22 demo where I'm using Java 22. So right now on line number 7, I'm just calling the default constructor, right, of parent, and I want to call this I and j. Let's say I want to call it for 1 and 3. Now the point is, so I can call this super by passing the value of I and j without taking I and j in the child constructor. I'll go into main and I'll just run this application. Now you can see this, that by default Java 22 parameterized constructor is getting called. However, this was not possible with any other version of Java. Now let's talk about the third scenario where let's say the child is only taking the string I want to convert this string and I want to pass it to parent. That is still not possible. So I cannot change the data type of this child string in my constructor, and then I cannot call the parent constructor, right? I have created this temporary string by the value called 10. Now I want to pass this temp into this child. I'll just pass it like this, temp. But inside this constructor, I want to convert this into integer and then I want to pass it to the parent. That is not possible. I'll have to call integer dot value of temp. Right? Now what I did, I wanted to convert this 10 into integer, and I wanted to call this constructor of parent where I'm passing I and j. Then I'll have to again collect it here, int I and int j, and then only I can call this. So conversion is not possible whenever it comes to any other version of Java. I'll run this application. You can say now I'm able to call this parameter. Whenever your parameters type for child and parent are different, then you have to get the value whenever you're creating an object of child. Now I'll go into Java 22 here, and I'll try to create an object of child in Java 22, and I'll pass a string temp equals to 10. I want to call this child only by taking 10. Then I can pass integer dot value of, and then I can pass this child string, and similarly I can also pass this here. So what I did, I took only one parameter from the main and I'm converting my data type from string to integer, and then I'm trying to call the parent. Okay, I'll go into main and I'll just run this, and you will able to see that I'm able to call 22 parameterized constructor again. So that is the third point. So that is about statement before super. Thank you so much for watching.